Welcome to the Cosmic Institute. My name is Max, and if this is your first time being here, this show is all about astrology and using astrology as a serious language for self-knowledge and timing. Not vague sun signs, not vague predictions, but real systems, both Western and Vedic Eastern, and using both systems in the same reading side by side. This first episode is the foundation. Before we even look at a chart, I want you to understand where this tradition came from, what it actually claims, and why, in my opinion, it is more relevant now than it has ever been before. The oldest known astrological records. The oldest surviving records we have are the Babylonian cuneiform clay tablets. We're talking roughly 1800 BC. That's nearly 4,000 years ago. And here's what's interesting about them. They weren't fortune telling. They weren't someone peering into a fire and predicting what would happen to you next Thursday. They were records of patterns, observations made over hundreds of years by astronomers, priests really, who were watching the sky and correlating what they saw above with what was happening below. War, famine, the flooding of the Tigris, the health of a king. They were pattern recognition at a civilizational scale. The sky as a clock, not a crystal ball. That framing is one I'll keep coming back to throughout this show because I think it's the most honest and useful way to understand what astrology really is. The central question this episode answers. So what if the sky is a clock, not a crystal ball? And what if astrology isn't about being told what will happen, but about understanding the quality of time in which we live in, the kinds of conditions that are operating so that you can navigate more consciously? That's what this episode's all about. Where did the clock come from? How did it split into two traditions? What do those two traditions actually claim? And why I believe that holding both of them together gives you something neither one proves alone. Ancient origins, from Mesopotamia through Egypt, Greece, and India. Mesopotamia, the beginning. They watched the cycles of Venus over 8 years. They tracked both Jupiter and Saturn. They developed the zodiac, the 12-sign band of the sky through which all the planets appear to move, originally as a coordinate system, a way of mapping the sky so that any planet's position could be precisely described and communicated. It wasn't mysticism at first, it was astronomy. The mysticism came from the correlations that they kept noticing throughout time. Egypt. Timing and the stars. The Egyptians were especially focused on the stars as timing markers. The heliacal rising of Sirius, the star Sirius, appearing on the horizon just before dawn, after months of invisibility, marked the annual flooding of the River Nile. It was a matter of survival. Know when the star rises, know when the flood comes, know when to plant. Greece, where philosophy enters. When the Greek world absorbed Babylonian astrology, largely through the conquests of Alexander the Great, they did what Greeks always did with foreign knowledge. They philosophized it. They asked why the sky might influence earthly events. They gave us the concept of the four elements, fire, earth, air, and water, as the fundamental qualities underlying all matter. They built a philosophical framework around the idea of correspondence, that the same principles operating in the heavens operate in everything below. Ptolemy, in the 2nd century CE, wrote the Tetrabiblos, essentially the first systematic Western astrology textbook, and it's still read today. India, the other river. Simultaneously and largely independently, a parallel tradition was developing in India. Vedic astrology, Jyotish, is one of the 6 auxiliary disciplines of the Vedas, the ancient Sanskrit scriptures. It's at least as old as the Babylonian tradition, possibly even older. But it developed in a very different direction. Where Western astrology was pulled through the psychology of the individual, the Greco-Roman focus on the person, the self, free will, Vedic Eastern astrology remained focused on karma and timing, on the soul's curriculum across lifetimes, on the planetary periods that shape the chapters of a life. The split. Why Western and Vedic placements differ by around 24 degrees. Here's one of the most common questions I get, and it's a fair one. Someone has been told their whole life that they're a Scorpio. They come to me, I run their Vedic chart, and I tell them their Vedic sun is actually in Libra. They look at me like I've just told them they're adopted. So here's what's happening. The Earth's axis wobbles very slowly, like a spinning top losing momentum. This wobble is called the precession of the equinoxes, and it means that the position of the sun against the background stars gradually shifts over time. One wobble takes place about every 26,000 years. Western astrology in the tropical system anchors the zodiacs to the seasons. 0 degrees Aries is always the spring equinox. The moment the sun crosses the celestial equator moving north, it doesn't matter where the stars actually are. The seasons are always the reference point. This makes Western astrology a solar system. It's about the relationship between the Earth and the sun. Vedic astrology in the sidereal system anchors the zodiac to the actual stars, the constellations. And because the Earth's axis has wobbled over the 2,000 years since Western and Vedic astrology were last aligned, the two zodiacs are now approximately 24 degrees apart. What this means practically. So, which one is right? Both. They're measuring different things. The tropical zodiac tracks seasons, the psychological quality of time, the relationship of consciousness to the solar cycle. The sidereal zodiac tracks the actual sky, the karma baked into the cosmic backdrop at the moment of your birth, where they agree on a placement. Same sign in both systems. That's your most reinforced signal. Where they differ, that's where the conversation gets interesting. This is the core of what I do at the Cosmic Institute. I hold both. I don't choose. I ask what each one is telling us, and where they agree is where the story becomes most clear. What astrology actually claims. Let me be very direct about this, because I think it's important. Astrology does not claim to predict your fate. Serious astrology has never claimed this. What astrology claims is that the position of planets at the exact moment of your birth describe the energetic territory you're working within this lifetime. Not what will happen to you, the tendencies, the themes, the natural strengths and places where you'll be asked to do more work. Think of it like a weather map. A weather map doesn't tell you what you'll do tomorrow. It tells you whether you'll need an umbrella. You still decide whether to go out. Not a prison, a map. The chart is a map, not a prison sentence. I say this every time I sit with a new client, because some people arrive a little afraid of what they're going to find. Afraid that there's something in the chart that's going to tell them they're doomed to repeat a pattern, or that they'll never find love, or that they've missed their window. That's not what we're doing here. The map shows you the terrain. Understanding the terrain means you can navigate it more intelligently. A Saturn placement that shows difficulty in early life isn't a curse. It's a description of where your deepest mastery is being forged. Real examples: Saturn and Pluto in 2020, Pluto in Aquarius. Let me give you two examples that I think illustrate the power of the system when you step back and look at it from a macro level. Saturn conjunction Pluto in Capricorn, January 2020. Saturn is the planet of structure, limitation, discipline. Pluto is the planet of transformation, death, and rebirth. It tears down what is no longer structurally sound. Capricorn is the sign of institutions, government, healthcare systems, corporate structures, established order. Saturn and Pluto meet in Capricorn roughly every 35 years. In January 2020, they were exactly conjunct. sitting on top of each other in the sky for the first time since 1518. And what happened? The global pandemic. The entire world's institutional infrastructure was stress tested simultaneously. The healthcare system, the financial system, the way we work, the way we gather. Now, I'm not saying the planets themselves caused the pandemic. What I'm saying is that a pattern was visible before it happened, and that's the power of the timing system. Now, Pluto entered Aquarius in 2023, beginning a transit that will last until 2044. Aquarius is the sign of networks, collective intelligence, technology, and the redistribution of power from centralized authority to decentralized systems. Pluto transforms whatever it touches. What has 2020 onwards looked like? The explosion of AI, the conversation about who owns information and who controls it, the rapid questioning of centralized institutions, the rise of decentralized finance, decentralized media, decentralized everything. Again, it's all pattern recognition. The sky as a clock that marks the quality of an era. The dual lens explanation. Western chart psychology. This is the heart of what the Cosmic Institute does. So I want to spend some real time here. The Western chart in the tropical system is primarily a psychological instrument. It maps the terrain of the self, how you think, how you feel, how you love, how you seek meaning, where you struggle, and what you're capable of. The sun describes your conscious identity, who you're becoming, the role you're playing in this lifetime. The moon describes your emotional interior, how you feel safety, how you process what you need. The rising sign describes how you meet the world, your instinctive approach, your social presentation, the body you were given for this incarnation. The planets in your chart describe the internal cast of characters, the psychological forces at play in your psyche. Mars is your will, your drive, your aggression and vitality. Venus is your capacity for pleasure, beauty and connection. Saturn is the inner teacher, serious, demanding, long-term, slow to reward, but deep in its returns. The houses map these forces onto the arenas of your life. Career, relationship, home, creativity, money, health. Wherever a planet sits is where that energy plays out most visibly in your external life. Vedic chart, destiny and timing. The Vedic chart is a different kind of instrument. It's less interested in the psychology of the individual and more interested in the soul's assignment in this lifetime. The karma that was crystallized at the moment of birth, the timing of when different chapters of life open and close. The Vedic system gives us tools the Western system simply doesn't have. The 27 nakshatras, the lunar mansions, give an extraordinary level of nuance to every planet's placement. Your Vedic moon sign isn't just Cancer or Leo. It's one of 27 specific nakshatra positions, each with its own deity, symbol, quality, and soul texture. The nakshatras are the fingerprint within the fingerprint. The Vimshutri Dasha system gives us the timing tool I consider the most sophisticated in any astrological tradition anywhere on Earth. It's a 120-year cycle of planetary periods, each planet ruling a period of between 6 and 20 years. And within each major period, a sequence of sub-periods unfolds. We'll go deeper on this in episode 5, but for now, it's what tells you which chapter you're in, which planet's energy is most active, what the overall quality of this season of your life is asking from you. Where they agree is your strongest signal. Here's the principle I want you to take away from this episode. When you have your dual lens reading, Western and Vedic Eastern together, you'll notice places where both systems describe the same thing. Maybe both show a strong emphasis on Scorpio energy. Maybe both place your most prominent planet in the same house. Maybe both describe the same core tension in your chart. Where they agree, that is your most reinforced, most reliable signal. That's the thing you can trust most clearly. Where they differ though, that's where the conversation really begins. That's where I find the most interesting nuance, because the Western system is telling you something about the psychology, and the Vedic Eastern system is telling you something about the karma, and sometimes they're giving you complementary information rather than contradictory information. That is why I don't use only one system. I hold both. And my experience over many readings is that the picture that emerges is significantly more complete than either one provides alone. For when they merge together, they bring two parts of the same whole. Bringing it home. Everything we've covered today, the 5,000-year history, the two rivers and how they split, what the system actually claims, the dual lens framework, this is the foundation. This is the context that makes the chart truly meaningful. The next 5 episodes will go deeper into specific parts of the system, modern life and practical applications, astrology and scripture, the architecture of the chart, the signs, the houses, the big three, the Vedic timing system, and finally, what your chart says about your soul's assignment in this lifetime. But all of it starts with this. The chart is a map, both maps held together, the psyche and the timing, who you are and when your life is moving. Now, if any of this has made you curious about your own chart, I want to offer you something very special. At thecosmicinstitute.com, you can generate your own free dual system reading in under 2 minutes, just your birth date, your birth time, and your unique place of birth. Western and Vedic Eastern astrology side by side, computed and interpreted just for you, straight to your inbox. It's free and it only takes 2 minutes, and it gives you the language we've been talking about all today, applied to your specific sky. The link is in the show notes, and I'll be back for episode 2. See you all then.